Over the years, I've used a lot of different herb grinders, and one thing that I've noticed is many of them are very similar. They have a similar design. Maybe they have different shaped teeth. Maybe they have different size holes on the grind plate. But for the most part, they all just look similar, different versions of each other. Maybe they use stainless steel instead of aluminum or whatever. I thought that the quality of the grind in any case was going to come down to the layout of the teeth and the design of the teeth. Anytime I'd go check out a new grinder, I'd inspect the teeth, and if it had something a little bit different than I've used before, they were spaced out more or closer together, or a different shape, I would end up trying them out. Well, not too long ago, I came across a grinder that doesn't use any teeth. It has no teeth. In fact, it's maybe not even called a grinder. You might call it a mill. Now, maybe you remember a couple years ago, I made a video about an early version of the flour mill. I think that had some problems with it. They don't sell that one anymore. And they've updated it since, and I'm so glad that they did because they have a couple different versions now. I do want to say I have a Cewpins code over at Flour Mill USA. I'm not quite sure what it gets you, but they do have a few different options right now, and I would say that their standard one is way better than their premium one. Now, I was actually such a fan of the Flour Mill when I first used it. No teeth in there. You just have a mill plate here, and then you have a screen here. This one has medium-sized holes. The premium one, you can get a bunch of different sizes. You can get fine, extra fine, coarse, extra coarse. They have a lot of screen options. But one thing I don't like about the premium is it has too many moving parts. Like, you can unscrew the middle to swap out the plate. And I found it a little bit rickety over time. And that was the one I was testing out initially. And I was like, oh, man, I don't know if I like this thing. And then out of nowhere, I just grabbed the cheaper one. Like, this thing's like 45 bucks. I think it's the larger size one. And I was like, let me just give this a try. Oh my God, I like this thing so much. It's super simple. It's only 3 different parts. There's no keef screen. I can't swap the plates out, so I can't accidentally loosen it up. There was like several things that I could unscrew on the premium one. And every time I'd go to use it, I'd knock something loose or I'd have to tighten something. And I was like, this is kind of annoying to use. I want my grinder or my mill to be a little bit more simple. And this one is so simple. So I'm glad I gave it a try because I'm a big fan of this thing. Now, why am I a big fan? Well, when I first tested out the mill, one thing that I noticed is it made my combustion hits better. If I was lighting a bowl with a Bic lighter, I would get a better hit when I used the mill. And the reason is it would give me like a fluffy, more consistent ground material. Sometimes when you use a grinder, some of it's bigger pieces than others. You get a lot of keef in there sometimes. Some grinders have keef catches. This one doesn't. But I would always get like a nice fluffy consistency of flour. And when you're doing combustion hits, you want a good combination of ground up flour, but with a decent amount of airflow so you can actually pull the whole thing. And when you have a finer material and the bowls get packed really tight, sometimes that just burns really hot and it's harder to take a bigger hit. So I was noticing that every time I would use the mill, I was able to take like a bigger, easier to manage hit. And mostly because the airflow was provided by the consistency of the material that you get from here. Now, this is just the regular one, so it doesn't have a fine plate or a coarse plate option like the premium. But this thing comes in handy with a lot of the handheld dryer vapes that I use. I'm noticing that when I have something that relies on conduction over convection, that the finer material just doesn't get the best hits. But a lot of the little handhelds that I got, I'll pull the flour out of here and I get way better hits than the other stuff that I would use for like a ball vape, for example. I'm at a point right now where I know that one grinder is not going to do the job for me every time. I don't want to sit here and then swap plates out to have a different level of material. So I got this guy when I'm using ball vapes and I want a finer material, and then I got this guy when I'm using handhelds or when I'm doing other stuff. But I really like the simplicity of this. This is the basic version, like I said, a little 3-piece design, not a lot of moving parts. Easier to maintain and just easier to use because it's less parts. But one thing that you'll notice when you use a mill over a grinder is you don't really need to break the buds down as much. Every time I use a grinder, I'll just start breaking the buds off. Just try to remove the stem, try to remove any sugar leaves that didn't get trimmed out. And then I'll put small pieces in the grinder and then I'll grind it up. With this, I don't always do that. I can just toss a whole nug in here. I can mill it up. And a lot of the time, unless I push it down really hard, a lot of the time I can mill around the stem. So when I'm done, I can feel the plate dragging against the stem in there. I pop the top off and I have a couple of stems in there. It's not perfect, But like in a pinch, sometimes if I don't feel like de-stemming my buds, I toss it in here and I'll mill around the stem and then I can pick the stems out. You can't quite do that on a lot of grinders. Sometimes it happens, right? But I'm telling you, those teeth get in the way. It's hard to reach my fingers in anything. I hate when I see a little bit of a stem on the hole in the grinder and I'm trying to reach around the teeth to pull it out. And I just knock it in the hole and I'm like, great, now I'm going to smoke it. I'm not going to find it in the pile. So I really did want to make an update. I dropped the video on like the OG flour mill, but they had some problems, so I had to take it down. They updated this thing, and I'm actually a big fan of this. I hope more companies make toothless grinders or mills or other options. But this one is a really low-cost option and actually does a really good job. Either way, try code Cewpins over at Flour Mill USA and hop over to my Twitch stream. I'll have a link over there if you just type !mill or !flour mill in my Twitch chat. But come get lit with us. The session starts at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you there, my dudes.